For RCR TV, I'm Joey Jackson. On this episode of Cell Tower News, I talk with founding members of the Unmanned Aerial Systems Committee, Phil Larsen and Jim Goldwater, about the work they're doing to make drones safer, as well as applications in the tower industry and regulatory concerns. That and all the latest news in the tower industry.
Today's episode is brought to you by Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.net.
For 20 years, NATE has been the undisputed global leader in safety, standards, and education for the wireless and broadcast communications infrastructure industries.
Welcome back to Cell Tower News, where we discuss the backbone of the wireless world. Before we get into the fascinating discussion about unmanned aerial systems, let's check in with Jared Matula, writer of Cell Tower Wrap column on rcrwireless.com, to see what's going on in the tower industry. Take it away, Jared.
Thanks, Joey. Our top story this week involves the carrier AT&T. Here's a little bit of background to better understand the story. In June of 2013, Thomas Jeglum fell 50 feet off a tower in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He was doing routine repair and maintenance. A rung on his detachable ladder failed, causing the fall. Jeglum was badly hurt in the fall. He suffered a traumatic brain injury, hemorrhages on his lungs, and breaks to his leg, torso, and vertebrae. Subsequently, Jeglum sued AT&T of Dallas, AT&T Mobility of Atlanta, B&T Group, and B&T Engineering of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Calvary Temple of Allentown, claiming their negligence and safety violations were responsible for the tragic fall. Jeglum is seeking damages in excess of $50,000 plus various costs. AT&T responded to the suit by asking a Pennsylvania court to throw it out. The company says AT&T has always been a holding company incorporated in Delaware with headquarters in Dallas. Following from that, AT&T wants the suit tossed because the case lacks both general and specific jurisdiction. I can tell you, when I posted this story on social media, some tower climbers had a very strong reaction to AT&T's request for dismissal, claiming that their request for dismissal was a reflection on how little they cared for health and safety of tower climbers working on its towers. But of course, that's just one opinion. The story is still developing, so check back with RCR Wireless News for more information as it becomes available. In other tower news this week, industry heavyweight American Tower posted third quarter numbers. The company reported that management revenue grew 20% since the same quarter last year to $1.21 billion. American Tower's net income during the quarter declined by $124 million to $76 million. Executives chalked the decline up to a one-time $93 million cash exchange and another $78 million related to unrealized foreign currency losses to intercompany balances. American Tower also recently acquired a 51% controlling stake in India's Viom Networks, although the details of that transaction are still awaiting regulatory approval. For more on these stories and many others, be sure to keep up with RCR Wireless News and read my Tower Wrap every week on Fridays on rcrwireless.com. Back to you, Joey.
All right, as always, thanks for that, Jared. And I must say, that's a good-looking haircut you got there, my friend. All right, now to the heart of the show. I recently had a chance to talk with Phil Larsen and Jim Goldwater, who are very active in the tower industry, working with NATE and other organizations to make the industry safer and more efficient. Let's take a look at that interview. All right, I'm here with Phil Larsen, president of Telecommunications at HAZON Solutions, and Jim Goldwater of Bob Lawrence and Associates, and he also represents NATE in legislative and regulatory issues in Washington. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Pleasure to be here.
And so let's start by getting to know both of you a little bit better. Let's start with Phil. Phil, you've had your hands in a lot of different areas. Can you tell me a little bit about your day job as president of Telecommunications at HAZON Solutions, as well as other endeavors that you're working on?
Well, thanks, Joey, again for having us here today. I think it's a great opportunity. My role at HAZON Solutions during the day is convoluted, to say the least. I work on numerous different things, especially telecommunications related, but then then also in the UAV space. So one of the things I'd like to start off with is awareness. That we work a lot on awareness, and one of the things in awareness is that we don't use the word drone in our world because we're not military and we don't do airstrikes. However, I think some of our customers would like us to do that. But that's just not what we do. We use the words UAV for unmanned aerial vehicles or UAS for unmanned aerial systems. And when we talk about the systems, that's generally the whole thing. That's the remotes in conjunction with the actual bird. That's one of the things that we do in awareness. One of the other things we talk about in awareness is what it is that we can do for the industry. What it is that UAS or a UAV can do for the industry is in our awareness piece, right? It's what can we actually go out, do, and deliver backwards. So I work a lot in the awareness piece to make sure that people who, obviously there's questions. There's a lot of questions, and we want to make sure we're getting those questions answered. So again, I work a lot in the awareness, but one of the other areas I work in is the competitive edge, right? The SOW competitive edge, which is, our equipment is very expensive. It is quite a bit of financial endeavor for a real good UAV company to be in this space and to try to meet the demand of the industry. And the telecommunication industry has a severe demand of accuracy. What is exactly the rad center? What is the azimuth? What is the down tilt? And to be able to do that, you have to have the right technology, and we do at HAZON. But so I'm constantly working and balancing numbers between the cost of technology, the cost to the industry. How do we stay competitive with tower climbers? Obviously, we're not trying to put tower climbers out of work. We're trying to enhance their role and give them more information so they can be more productive and safer. So I work in the financial aspect all the time. That's one of my daily challenges. The other aspect of what I do is when we start talking about safety, we work in the safety piece of it in a large element. The reason being is how can a UAV be safe? How can a tower climber use a UAV? So I work in the safety component. I look at the rules and the regulations, and I adhere them into our company and make sure that we're adhering to the exact same safety regiment that is in the telecommunication industry now. So we do that, and then we also implement our own in there, which is regulated by the FAA and other entities. So we basically incorporate all this together. So we're always working to develop a program that supersedes both industries, right? So it's a marriage, if you will, and that's the important part of what we really try to do. At the end of the day is, I have a strong background in operations. As the director of ops for Nexius and the director of education and training for PCIA. What I take it from that is I work on the logistics side to always ensure that whatever work we do out there is safe. It has a financial point that everyone's aware of exactly what we can do. But then how is it that we can teleport that into, a viable product? So I work on that all the time. These are the things that I work continuously on, and Jim can speak to these things too. He does the same thing in a lot of ways. I mean, imagine this, if you will, the work that we do in those steps and those, making sure the financials and awareness and all that is in place is allow us to provide something to the industry that hasn't been there before. And that's detail, an exceptional amount of detail. So I'll give you just a thing. Imagine a tower crew going on site for the first time. And then they're having the ability to actually review all of the site prior to, right? And that would be provide details of the safety climb, the ladder that they'll be climbing, any wildlife, the access road, all of which it goes to the point of familiarization of the site and safety of the site. But then it also gets back to the logistics side. So we increase productivity. We minimize the change order piece, so we can get the work deployed and get it going. So all of which is what I work on a daily basis with numerous people every day.
And so, Jim, you have a little bit of a different perspective on the issue. You're more on the legal side, and you represent a number of clients in Washington and a number of different in a number of different industries, from telecommunications to agriculture. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do out there in Washington?
Sure. I've been working with Bob Lawrence and Associates for about 20 years. We're a small government relations firm. I do some lobbying. So I work with, I take what our clients want. I mostly work with our corporate clients. Principally right now, it's NATE, the telecommunications tower industry, as well as a group called ArcLight Capital, which is a private equity firm that invests mostly in energy, some fossil, a lot of renewable. So we translate what they're interested in and meet with members of Congress, their staff committees, as well as federal agencies to try to translate what is important to our clients into either a legislative action or a regulatory action, something that an agency such as OSHA, the FCC, may put into effect.
And so you're both really why we're here is to talk about the Unmanned Aerial Systems Committee that you're both getting involved with in conjunction with NATE. And can you tell me a little bit about your role in that committee and how you got involved in it?
Phil, you want to start?
Sure. I actually asked for the UAV committee at NATE. That was one of the things when we sat down with NATE before we became a charter member with them. One of the things I asked for was this UAS committee because I see it coming. I see the questions. I see the potential long lead items in it. And we need it to be a voice. We need to have a voice of the industry put together that could actually speak for the industry. So Jim and I have been really fortunate to be sitting on that committee. I'm not sure what roles he and I exactly have, but I think we're kind of heading it at this point. But we're excited to get that committee underway and start generate the volumes of response backwards because our industry has questions. Can UASs do this certain work? Can they deliver this? And what are the rules? What are the regulations? What do we need to be aware of with FAA? What all the different stipulations might be in place here. So we're the committee that's going to be doing that and bring a voice to the from our industry forward. We'll actually be doing that for everyone.
Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
Certainly. At the NATE summer meeting in August, I had recommended, after talking with Phil and a few other people within the industry, I had recommended to the NATE Board of Directors that we create this committee, an ad hoc committee or something like that, since the technology has been moving so quickly and there's so many issues. Certainly there are a lot of people, based on what the president had proposed back in February, there's the principal issues were privacy, accountability, and transparency. I'm looking at it slightly differently. It is very important to all the stakeholders, all these commercial industries, to want to be able to use this, whether it's a news industry or it's somebody such as the tower industry that wants to be able to use these to facilitate the employees' work. But I also want to look at this from a safety standpoint. So when we talked about this, and again, it's not just commercial users that are at play here. There's also the recreational or the hobbyists, which are catching a lot of the news where there's going to be an issue by an airport or intruding on airspace. So there are enormous safety issues. So we thought that having a NATE committee to talk about these sorts of things and to represent the industry's views with the larger entity in Washington would be the appropriate thing to do. And Phil and I are members of that, along with, I think, 5 other NATE members. And I think it's a very important thing that we're working on.
And this is still in its infancy. What do you see it looking like in the near future or moving forward?
The committee?
Yeah.
Well, we are working. I'll have to back up a second. It's not just the committee that's working on it for NATE itself, but the National Telecommunications and Information Administration within the Department of Commerce has, I think this is your segue into your next question, has developed a panel in concert with the Federal Aviation Administration to try to come up with a best practices document, how we can best address both the commercial and recreational use of the UAS. It's mostly, there have been 3 meetings so far with this NTIA entity, mostly focusing on privacy. And I think privacy, certainly from a news standpoint or somebody using one of these systems to intrude on somebody's backyard, those are certainly privacy issues that we have to be focusing on. But the bigger issue, I think, is we certainly want to enhance safety. And if you, let's put it into perspective of the tower worker. If you have a tower worker that has to go up 1,000, 2,000 feet up a tower, you're running into potential weather issues. You're running into potential fatigue, repetitive stress, any number of very deleterious factors that could impact their health and safety. If instead of having to climb up with 60 pounds of equipment, instead of doing that, you can have one of these systems go up and take a picture to see if everything is appropriate, everything is working right, that a piece hasn't been rusting off. That is going to enhance safety. It's going to increase the competitiveness and the economic well-being of the industry because you're doing things in a faster, more efficient fashion.
And Jim put it very well. Phil, do you have anything to add as far as the role that drones will play in the tower industry moving forward?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no question whether or not the drones will play a role. It's right now we're on the verge of the win. We literally are. Within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be at the win point. And they will be used. They will actually become a commonality. They will actually become a piece of equipment that's in a toolbox, in a sense. We honestly see them coming along to that direction. And right now, the problem that lies is that we have people, and back to Jim's point with the NTIA, as we spoke earlier, this is a major issue that we have. It's not that UAVs were in a commercial space first and went to recreational outside of that. It actually happened the opposite. It was a recreational tool that went to commercial use. And so we're fighting that battle all the time, it's an uphill battle. And Jim brings up a good point, is that we have to worry about the recreational user and how they're used because it definitely affects us in the commercial side. So when we answer the question, will we be able to utilize these in the telecommunication world? And the answer is an emphatic yes. They will be utilized, and the sensory equipment that we're using today is exceptional, and it's beyond what we could have imagined, and it's only getting better. I sit on numerous panels where we talk about sensory equipment and different types of programs that can give us more data, more information than what we've ever had before. In fact, what we're doing now is more than we've ever had. So yes, we'll see these being used on a regular full-time basis in the telecommunication industry, and not only just ours, but in numerous industries. We're HAZON's in power, we're in railroad, we're in wind. We're doing it for all of the industries. So it is only a matter of time before the win button is actually pushed, and I think that that's coming fairly soon.
And Jim, on the regulatory side, what kind of challenges are you seeing from Washington?
First and foremost, I guess there is outside the Beltway, there is sometimes an antipathy towards the federal government, that the federal government may be overreaching. On this case, and of course, you have different commercial interests have different viewpoints. So when we're working with this NTI entity, the news industry may have a different standpoint than the tower industry may have. I know that when we had the most recent NTIA meeting, again, most of the people in there are talking about commercial interests, and I wanted to throw my 2 cents worth in as a safety advocate. I've worked on safety issues for years in a previous job, and I'm working on safety issues with NATE, which is committed to the safety of the tower industry. And I think it's wonderful that we're looking at the commercial application, but as Phil mentioned before on education and training, NATE is very committed to that. And I'm going to extrapolate it, not just applying to the commercial use, but I think it's critical that the recreational users get encompassed in this NTIA process. I know that the Federal Aviation Administration a few weeks ago came up with its new proposal that all new drones, UAS, whatever you want to call them, have to be registered. And that's all well and good. But what you have to do is couple that with educating them and training them as to here's what you're allowed to do, because I'll bet that most of them don't know what all the restrictions are. And you can't go up 400 feet into airspace. But that's not to say that somebody couldn't decide that they're going to take this down a highway and buzz people, which could create other problems. And let's bear in mind, we are a disaster-oriented society. We only seem to act after there's a problem. And if we see a problem that's about to happen, or there's going to be a problem here unless we take steps right now to do something about it. And I need to tell a quick little story that I've talked to Phil about before. I used to work for the governor of New York years ago. We had a situation where there was something called grade crossings, roads that were crossing over railroad tracks. We wanted to get rid of those because we saw that as being a real potential problem. And there was a very powerful New York State senator who said, it's going to cost too much money, I'm going to oppose it. We saw that it was a problem that was going to happen, and it did. A school bus crossed over one of these train tracks, got stuck, the train hit the bus, everybody on the bus was killed. The state senator wound up changing his mind because, unfortunately, one of his children was one of the people who was killed on the train, on the bus. This is the same thing that we're looking at with the UAS. We see a problem that's about to happen. We have to take all necessary steps that we can right now to prevent a bigger problem from happening.
Wow, that's a powerful example of why this needs to happen. And you mentioned working with NTIA, and you've also worked with the FAA on some of the policy and regulations. Can you tell me a little bit more about maybe Phil, you can talk to this about what you guys have discussed with the FAA and NTIA?
Well, we've had numerous discussions. The FAA is doing a phenomenal job of what they have to work with. They're ahead of this Trojan horse, so to speak, because they see it coming, and they've seen it coming, and they've tried to be reactive to that, and they've stayed with aviation guidelines as a manned aircraft to help give some rules and regulations in place. So we've had numerous discussions with the FAA in regards to what's next. And we do know something of what's next that's coming. We expect that in the next 6 to 8 months. The wheels are turning at the FAA in conjunction with our line of work, our industry. We do have a good voice there. I've met with them. Jim has spoken with them as well. My CEO, Dave Kohler, is also part of the small unmanned aerial committee that reports to them, and he actually works with Virginia Tech, which is actually 6 training centers in the United States, and we actually have an MSA with them. It's where we're one of the vendors that does all the training pieces. So we are very tight with the FAA and following that, and they're doing what they can, Joe. They really are. They're trying to be reactive to what they can. In fact, Jim, you remember the story? There's a $1.7 million fine just handed out to a commercial user that he was, out doing aerial photography over structures, things that aren't allowed in the rules right now, which if you're not following that, that's a problem for all of us. But they were doing it and they're promoting it. They used it as a marketing piece. The FAA saw it and fined them at $1.7 million. So at the end of the day is they are being responsive, and I think they're acting swiftly, and I think they're acting decisively. Again, it's up to us in the commercial side and even the recreational user. Back to Jim's point on the NTIA, when we talk about the commercial and recreational user, yes, the recreational user is causing us more grief than we really need in our industry. They're the ones who don't have any rules per se to follow, and they're the ones flying at 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet in the air just to see if they can. And then I think we had 748 close calls with airliners last year. And revolving drones. Now, I can't say that they were all recreational users. At the end of the day is we believe that the bulk of them were. But we still have commercial applications being done currently, even though we don't have permission in our world, in the telecommunication world, to be out there flying at the highest levels anyway. So, I mean, there is a lot of things to talk about, and we are engaged with NTIA in regards to that. We are engaged with the FAA. In making sure that these points are heard from our perspective. And that's why this UAS committee is so important.
And Nate's been kind of instrumental in getting all of this stuff together. Can you tell me about working with Nate and why you guys decided to work with them to push this forward?
Well, Jim, I'll start off. How's that? Jim's a long-term member of Nate. He's been there for a lot longer than I have. I've used to sit across the aisle, obviously, when I was with PCIA from Nate. But look, the end of the day is Nate is a great group of people. They have the biggest hearts in the world. They're definitely concerned with the safety piece. They definitely bring an element of realistic views to the industry. It's a pleasure to work with Nate. We haven't had any trouble in regards to working with Nate and their empathy towards what we're trying to marry here. They see it, they recognize it. Again, they're just a great group of people, and we've had no trouble. And I think that they're taking the lead, so to speak, on this. And I'm really glad to be part of them.
Jim, you have anything to say on that?
Just a little bit. Nate, again, I guess this is the commercial for Nate, is the recognized leader in safety in the telecommunications tower industry. We've worked with the FCC. We've worked extensively on a number of things over the last several years with great success with OSHA. We've done a lot with members of Congress who, I guess what we have, one of my credos has been through the years, credibility, visibility, accessibility. If you provide credible information, they're going to call on you for additional help. And we've gotten that from OSHA. We've had the FCC calling us up for some assistance. We've had members of Congress doing it. So we're here not only to promote education and training among our industry, but we're here to help educate and train the people who may be the people who are regulating us, such as the FCC or OSHA.
Yeah, because it's still so new. And Phil, speaking of Nate, a few months back, you were elected to the National Wireless Safety Alliance as vice chairman. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved and how it's going so far?
Yeah, absolutely. The NWSA is a means to standardize industry qualifications. That's what its design is. It's not a training platform by any stretch. We're just providing the means to standardize, bring out a baseline that's going to give everybody the opportunity to, test and find where they're at in the industry, what they need to keep learning on, keep the ongoing process of learning going, which is not a bonus in my opinion. If you have the qualifications and you meet those, it definitely helps you as a resume builder for a tower climber. Could potentially give you more money in your pocket with this certification. It was created, many months ago, many years ago, actually. It's a long story to that. I mean, how that came about, but at the end of the day, is this is a separate organization from Nate. Nate obviously was the one who kind of spearheaded, getting it rolling, and it has its own 501c6. It's its own entity. I get to work with Mr. Art Pregler from AT&T, who I absolutely love working with. He's a very a good gentleman, intelligent, and brings a lot to the table. So it's a pleasure to work with him. And we're well on our way. We are rolling out 2 courses. The rigger, we're rolling out 2 courses in 15. We're actually meeting in December this month to finalize some of that, which is nice because we actually will have 2 certifications that will be coming out. And then in 2016, we'll also be talking more about the Tower Tech Technician 1, which will come out, and then Tower Technician 2 will come out later that year. But that's where we're starting, and we've got a great group of people. The Board of Governors is an exceptional group of people, and the Tower Task Force, head up by Don Doherty, is a great group of people, all in the same interest, all with the same interest on doing the right thing by our industry. Again, back to Jim's point, before we have a tragic accident, so to speak, we're kind of getting ahead of the curve for the first time, in my opinion. The last 20 years, we've been trying to fight off the good old boy network, and this is the way we've always done it, line. And now we're at a point to where we're saying, enough's enough. We're going to draw a line. We're going to put some standards in place. And I think we're going to see a safer industry. I think we're going to see a more productive, more lucrative industry. And I think we're going to see a more professional, qualified, elevated worker that's going to come out of this. And I think they're going to benefit the most, realistically. And I think that everyone will see the benefits from the program.
And what about, I know that some of the tower workers are a little bit scared that the drones are going to take their jobs. Can you just reassure them a little bit about that their jobs are safe? It just might make them a little safer?
Yeah, as a tower climber, Joe, I can tell you this. I can see that concern, and that's a very, one-dimensional look at what drones can do. But it's really not that case at all. In fact, like I said, drones are going to become a part of their toolbox. They're going to use them. We want to prevent needless climbs, right? at the end of the day is we're providing so much data backwards from use of these things that the tower climber can be more efficient, that they can go out and do their job without going back and getting another picture and climbing that tower for another reason. Needless climb is what I call them. And it is a needless climb. And these guys get fatigued easy. You know, they're working their tails off and they get pushed hard. I mean, as an operations director, I can tell you, we push our guys hard. And so having these drones in place will eventually, in time, you will see that they actually have a place, and they're in conjunction with the tower worker. We've worked with several in testing phases, and they love them. They absolutely love them. They are not threatened by them whatsoever. In fact, in one of our testing cases, we had our tower crews come in first, review the video, look at the pegs, look at the safety climb, kind of get an upstairs view of the platform. They loved it. They said, "This is brilliant because now I can actually clip into that safety climb. I feel good that it's done, that it's correctly installed, that it's not damaged, and I'm able to climb safely." He says that takes a lot of weight off of us, and we really enjoy that. So I think we'll see that same thing follow forward with a lot of other guys. Now, again, I do hear their concern, but it's not going to be that way. In fact, it's going to be an added benefit to them in more ways than we can name here today.
And I'll echo that completely. That is, it's protecting them from the at-risk. As I mentioned before, where you have the weather issues, you have the weight of the equipment that they're using, you're having fatigue. There are any number of risks that can be minimized at that point. And with the expansion of the broadband, there is a lot of work that's available. So it's not going to be costing jobs, but it's going to be making the workers who are there safer.
And so, Jim, just finally, is there any other important projects that you're working on in Washington with regards to the telecom industry?
Well,
that you can
upcoming,
talk about.
There's, of course,
you might have to kill us later.
There's the broadband expansion. There's a lot that the FCC is working on. I should point out, years ago, we were working on something with the FCC, which is in the business of wanting to have more communications capabilities and more towers. We got into a debate with some environmental groups on migratory birds. The environmental groups were contending that migratory birds, millions of migratory birds were crashing into towers every year. We didn't have any evidence of that, and apparently neither did they. They couldn't quantify it. So we had some success in working with the FCC before. We're continuing to work with the FCC now on some of the broadband issues. We will, of course, always be working with OSHA, which has sway over the industry, making sure that the industry is as safe as possible. So we worked with the FCC over the last several months on a communications tower safety request for information. We provided extensive information on how to make the tower industry safer, and that is something to which we are greatly committed. And
Phil, last word, anything else you want to say?
You know, Joy, it's great to be here. We could talk about these topics for hours. You know, every day is a new challenge. Every day is a new topic. You know, it's great. What is nice about it is your RCR who taking the initiative to get us online here like this and start bringing this to light. We really appreciate that. Again, it's a marriage that has been betrothed to some degree. And we're excited to be able to get the message out, and we look forward to all your good things. And I thank Jim for the time that he was able to give us today from his regulatory perspective. Other than that, I thank you for the time.
And I thank you both. It was a great conversation, and take care until we talk to you next time.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Jim Goldwater and Phil Larsen, wealths of knowledge in the tower industry. I really appreciate all the hard work you're doing, and we'll be keeping an eye on what happens in the Unmanned Aerial Systems Committee, as well as the wide array of other endeavors that you guys are working on. But to close today's show, I want to bring attention to a tower company giving back to its community. We talk so much about negative news on this show. It's nice to spotlight companies that are doing some positive things out there. Centerline Solutions, a Colorado-based tower company, is getting in the giving spirit early, teaming up with a nonprofit called Wish for Wheels to provide new bikes to deserving kids who might not otherwise have a bike. Nearly all of Centerline's 300-plus employees built and delivered the bikes to kids in multiple states, including Colorado, Arizona, Hawaii, upstate New York, Oregon, which is where I'm from, so good on you there, and Washington. Overall, the company built and delivered 330 bikes. Big respect to Centerline for getting in the giving spirit and giving those kids something every kid should get to enjoy. Well, that's our show. Thanks for joining me. As always, stay safe out there.
Cell Tower News is a production of RCR TV. To reach Joey Jackson or suggest a show topic for Cell Tower News, contact him at jjackson@rcrwireless.com or on Twitter at @duck_Jackson. For more Cell Tower news, please visit rcrwireless.com.